This is Mac OS Ken.
Good news for one Apple partner, a big quarter for tablets, and you will never guess what movie Formula One group likes. It is Friday, the 8th of August, 2025. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Before we get into the show, this is going to be kind of cryptic, and it's not going to mean anything to most people listening, but if at the other show, you were one of the people who wrote to my mom to say happy birthday, that was 20 years ago this week. Thanks for being here. More good news for Apple on the tariff front. A piece from Bloomberg says the Cupertino company's chip-making partner TSMC will also avoid President Trump's 100% tariff on chips and semiconductors imported into the U.S. During Wednesday's press avail in the Oval Office with Apple CEO Tim Cook, Trump said companies either building in the U.S. or with firm plans to build in the U.S. would be exempt from his somewhat squishy tariff proclamation. Still, that seems to have been good enough for the Ministry of Taiwan's National Development Council. Bloomberg had him saying Thursday that TSMC is exempted from the chip tariffs because it has set up plants in the U.S. Second quarter was a good quarter for tablets in general, and iPad in particular, it seems. That is the word from IDC. Worldwide tablet shipments grew 13.1% year-over-year in the second quarter, according to the market tracker. Globally, growth was driven by product refreshes, replacement cycles, active education projects, and subsidies in China. Here in the States, want to guess? Vendor pre-stocking activity in anticipation of tariffs led to the better-than-expected numbers, according to the firm. On iPad specifically, IDC says Apple led the global market and shipped 12.7 million units and recorded a growth of 2.4% year-over-year in the quarter. The iPad 10.9-inch model bolstered growth for the vendor in the quarter. The 11 and 13-inch iPad Air were also refreshed within less than a year, but it still added to the growth volume. It is worth noting, IDC is tracking shipments, not sales. That goes a long way to explaining the growth they see, despite the tablet shrinkage reported in Apple's June quarter earnings. While the numbers look good overall, doesn't seem excited by them. A senior research analyst with the firm's mobility and consumer device trackers was quoted in the release as saying, "It is evident from tablet market performance in the second quarter that a significant number of consumers are value-driven and that price drops from promotions and subsidies can significantly change buying behavior. Tablets often function as secondary devices," says the analyst, "so many times consumers are willing to wait for deals rather than pay full price for the device. Even for top vendors like Samsung, it is their aggressive promotions that led to high volume sales in many regions, and for Apple, volume is still driven by their lower range iPads." Come on, get happy, huh? Japan appears to be chipping at Apple's control over iPhone. A piece from Mac Rumors says the island nation's Mobile Software Competition Act will force Apple to let non-WebKit web browsers into the iOS App Store later this year. Specifically, the piece says the law forbids designated providers from preventing individual app providers from using alternative browser engines. This is not the first time Apple has been forced to do this. According to the report, Apple has already allowed non-WebKit browsers on the iPhone and iPad in the EU since iOS 17.4 and iPadOS 18 to comply with the Digital Markets Act. However, Apple has a long list of requirements for alternative browsers on the iPhone and iPad, and there are still no major non-WebKit browsers available in the App Store on those platforms. Apple says the requirements are due to security and privacy considerations, according to Mac Rumors, though critics have argued that the policy is anti-competitive. Seeming to assume that the latter is the case, the Japanese regulation seems to have sharper teeth. The piece says it will allow web browsers and in-app browsers on the iPhone to use alternative browser engines like Blink, used by Chrome, Edge, and Opera, and Gecko, used by Firefox. Additionally, Mac Rumor says the Japanese law will require Apple to show a default browser selection screen in Safari on the iPhone. The new law is set to go into effect this December. Attention public testing people, there are new builds of this fall's Apple operating systems for you. Mac Rumors ran a few pieces Thursday, letting folks know that the second public betas were out for iOS and iPadOS 26, macOS 26 Tahoe, watchOS 26, and tvOS 26. If you're in the public beta program, test them if you got them. Folks wanting in on that action can find more info at beta.apple.com. The whole kit and caboodle should be released to the public in the next month and a half. Apple Maps has gone more bicycle-friendly in Hong Kong and Taiwan. Apple Insider says riders in the regions will now have access to directions geared specifically for pedaling people. First launched in iOS 14, the piece says Apple Maps bicycling directions prioritize bike lanes and paths when possible, or roads considered safer for cyclists when roads are the only way to go. Apple Insider says Maps also warns riders about upcoming obstacles or difficult terrain. This can include steep inclines or spots where they'll need to carry their bike upstairs. The rollout looks to be happening gradually. Apple Insider says it will likely start in major metropolitan areas and expand to suburban, exurban, and lower population density locations in stages. Somewhere along the way, Apple will probably also tell people about it. Neither Hong Kong nor Taiwan are showing up on Apple's list of countries supporting biking directions at this time. And finally today, you know who's got a lot of good things to say about F1, the movie? It is F1, the organization. A piece from The Hollywood Reporter says the Formula One group appears pretty stoked. According to Wikipedia, the Formula One group is a group of companies responsible for the promotion of the FIA Formula One World Championship and the exercising of the sport's commercial rights. Last part makes it sound like they would be among the groups of people to get paid for a movie like F1, and get paid they did. The reporter says the company, which is owned by Liberty Media, saw a one-time revenue increase from the release of the film in late June, which contributed to the group's 40% rise in revenue year on year to hit $1 billion. The amount that payment is said to have played was a mid-teens number, according to company execs. The thing is, they expect the movie to keep making waves. Speaking on Liberty Media's earnings call on Thursday, Formula One president Stefano Domenicali said, "I would say the effect of the movie is not only, of course, about the dollars and economical input, but the sport will have an incredible opportunity to grow its awareness and to generate the circular economy around that." Seriously, if Apple TV does not end up with a deal to carry Formula One, it would be surprising. This week on the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac, Apple is making a very slight change to the Wi-Fi picker in iOS 26. Should make it easier to spot secure versus open Wi-Fi networks, though. We'll look into it. And we'll check in on the St. Paul cyberattack and the other cyberattack in the other St. Paul. That is all on checklist number 435. Find it today at securemac.com/checklist or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOS Ken at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.